Can you explain how you decide when someone gives a non-answer versus giving an answer that we didn't like? Should we just be prepared, or whatever answer the opposition gives, work with what we got? I think it's better if you just work with whatever you got. Yeah, of course. Like, obviously sometimes I'm not fucking stupid, okay? Obviously, sometimes people give you an answer that's fucking dumb, but I don't think that that's something that happens like nearly enough or as much as people say. I think a lot of the time, here's the dealio. Okay? How am I going to do this? Maybe, and this is the first practice, okay? This is my first practice with the tablet, so please bear with me if it doesn't look very good. We have a spectrum of acceptable answers, all right? And I'm going to put this on both sides here. So we have a spectrum of acceptable answers. Over here on this side, unacceptable and bad faith. Okay? We have unacceptable and bad faith. That unacceptable and bad faith slowly but carefully fades into like, okay, maybe this is not great, and then fades into like, okay, maybe this is cool, actually, and then fades into like, okay, yeah, this is totally acceptable and something you can work with. I personally think, and we'll kind of see this when we put this for both people here, that unfortunately what ends up happening, I'm going to Control-C, Control-V, grab that, put it down here, is these people work very differently with their bar graphs, okay? Or with their little graphs here. So the person who's okay with dismissing answers will often consider all of these bad faith, right? But they will also have suspicions about people. So in a case where I know that somebody is somebody that I don't like, right? Somebody who's like a devil or a demon, right? When somebody's a bit of a devil or a demon, they will not only consider what is obviously bad faith, they will extend the bad faith label to anything that is questionable. And all of this will be considered bad faith. And because they are okay with dismissing answers, they will dismiss anything in this range, right? Whereas the person who works with what they got will recognize bad faith here. They'll try to push it into this zone here so that they can at least work with it, right? Whereas here, we're just going to be okay with dismissing. We're okay with dismissing anything that's bad faith. Something that seems like bad faith, we're also going to consider bad faith. And because anything that's bad faith, we're okay with dismissing, we end up dismissing like half of all like reasonable answers, or more than half of it, maybe 2/3 of what could be considered reasonable answers. Whereas the person who acknowledges like this part here is bad faith, they're going to work to push it into the zone where it's good faith. And that's even when they don't like the person, right? Even when they don't like the person. Okay. And then when you add on to this other beliefs that people have, like somebody who is bad faith once is always bad faith, right? Which is more likely to be the people up here in this range where they're okay with dismissing answers offhandedly. And then we look at here, works with what they got. These people are generally not going to be the same people who are going to consider someone always bad faith. They're going to look at every conversation they have as a new opportunity for this person to prove them wrong, right? And they're going to work to prove them wrong, right? So prove the assumption wrong. They're going to push them to prove that assumption wrong, and they're going to work to pull any bad faith answers into a territory where they can actually work with it. So the reason why I personally am not okay with dismissing answers all of the time is because I think that a dismissal of answers as like a matter of, policy or whatever is not only going to result in you missing the bad faith answers, right? Which is the goal I would imagine you would set out for, but it's also going to cause you to miss answers that lie in this in-between spectrum of bad. And rather than taking the course of action that is going to be pushing the bad faith answers into a territory where you can work with them, you're going to dismiss all of these. And you basically miss out on this entire bit of the spectrum here. And all that you're accepting is this here. Now, what, may I ask you guys, is going to be the probability? What is the percent chance that somebody who is bad faith or is somebody you don't like is going to give you this good answer. It's probably really low. You know, this is probably less than a 10% chance that you're going to get them to give you an answer that you considered really, really good faith. And I'm gonna grab this real quick, and I'm gonna call this good faith. Okay, good faith. The odds of this person giving you an answer that you would consider to be good faith, especially when we consider that when you are in a debate, so when you're in a debate, it is one idea. How can I represent this, right? So it's going to be like yin and yang. So you have one idea here, and then you have the complete opposite of that idea on the other side. So when you have somebody who you think is bad faith representing this argument over here, and then you have you, who of course you think is perfect, over here, not only, like, how often are you going to get a good faith answer from somebody who has an entirely different position than you, right? What is the good faith percent on this, right? It's not good. Maybe it's less than 50. I would say that is a very conservative estimate, right? So you have a less than 50% chance, even with a good faith interlocutor who represents a position that is completely different than your own, of giving you a good faith answer. I would say that if I was being like super duper like honest to myself, the odds that you're going to find somebody who gives you good faith answers and believes in something vastly different than you, per your own judgment of their answers, right? Because there's no objectively good or bad, is going to be like really 15%, right? You're going to need somebody who like you actually respect, right? So you probably need somebody that you respect. You need somebody with a communication style that is similar to yours. And you need somebody that you can listen to. Which I guess goes in with respect, right? And the idea that you're going to find somebody who A, respects you, and B, has a communication style similar enough to your own that they're able to like put forth these ideas in a way that you can digest them, that's got to be less than 15% in my opinion, okay? So the odds already that you're going to get a good faith like answer from these people or a defense of their position that you understand and that you respect is already going to be super low, okay? So the idea that then you would engage with somebody who you from the outset considered bad faith, right? And who you think is probably always going to be bad faith, the odds that they're going to be bad faith is probably going to be like greater than 90%. Here, let's do this. You think there's a greater, or, oops, sorry, I should use these correctly, a greater than 90% chance that they're going to be bad faith, then we're in a really tricky situation here. You're expecting that there's a greater than 90% chance and a less than 10% chance that they'll give you a good faith answer. You're going to dismiss any answer that you perceive as bad faith, and your perception of bad faith not only extends beyond what is atrociously bad faith, but goes into the territory of things that we could possibly work with, right? And this combination of things is really, really bad, and it tends to happen when you're okay with dismissing the answers of others. And you could put that under the guise of bad faith, you could put that under the guise of stupid, you could put that under the guise of unintelligent, whatever the fuck, however you want to label that, right? It's going to cause you a lot more problems than if you set out from the beginning to work with what you got. Because even if you get a bad faith answer, you are working to push that answer into a territory where you could work with it, into a territory where you're like, okay, I can actually fit this into my argument if it's in here, right? Or I can actually work at convincing them if it's in here, right? It's not pure good faith. It's not like the answer that like fits into my model exactly so that I can work with it super easily, but I'm at least getting an understanding for their model and they're listening to me a little bit, right? So that's why it is just this whole entire combination of things makes it super difficult. It can also make you look worse to an audience if you are that dismissive. Yeah, it could, definitely. There is an optical cost to being this dismissive. Because remember, if you're somebody like me, like good old Booksmarts boy, I would like to consider myself more in this category. And I think that that's okay. That's not blowing smoke up your guys' asses. I get in a lot of trouble for thinking that you can work with answers that are in here, or expecting people to take answers that are on this part of the spectrum, maybe right here, right? Where it's like borderline bad faith. It could probably go either way. You could interpret it either way, and expecting people to push the answer into here, right? Like, I get in trouble for this a lot. Thank you for the subscription. So I think it's okay for me to say that, like, generally speaking, let's undo all that. Generally speaking, I'm in this category. So if somebody like me and other reasonable people, because remember, if we're talking about yins and yangs and you're on the side that believes that okay with dismissing answers is here, right? If you believe this and I don't, and I believe this, right? Then we have different opinions, right? So I, of course, am going to be looking for other people that have this opinion. I'm going to look for other people that believe that you should work with what you got. And I'm going to apply that to any debater who I see debating. So if I see you dismissing answers, especially ones that are over here that have a much higher percentage chance of going this way, I'm going to think very poorly of you, right? I'm going to think that you're actually the obstacle in this conversation, because this person was so close to giving you like the perfect answer that any amount of work on your side could have brought it that way. And instead, you chose to work extra hard to bring it over here, right? And that's like not helping your cause at all. I think in general, there's a general rule that we probably don't want any answers to be in this area here. Right? Like, I think that that's an okay thing to say, that if we're talking in abstract, okay, and I have this bad faith to good faith graph here, okay, I think that in the abstract, we want to push answers that are in one quadrant into the other, right? Because we don't want this. We don't want this, right? And we want this. That I think we can all agree on, right? Like this, I think we can all agree on that we don't want that and we want that. Now, I think what naturally follows from this principle here is that then we should oops, hold on. I'm getting used to the pen, so bear with me. Is that we want to work towards desirable answers, right? I don't think anybody could argue against this either. In general, we should work towards desirable answers. The combination of these two things, that we don't want the answers on this side, we want the answers on this side, I think would lead me to believe that when we get answers from this side, we should work to get them here. I won't argue that because I get other people have different opinions, but I think we can agree that you don't want answers that are bad faith, you want answers that are good faith, and you want to work towards desirable answers. And desirable answers exist in this quadrant here. So I think if you have something that falls in the middle, rather than pushing and interpreting those things to be bad faith, when we have a 50-50 chance of pushing it either way, or we have a force, a conversational force that we want to apply to this area here, we want that force to go in this direction, okay? I think it's better that we apply that force in this direction to push a conversation to be more good faith, and I think it's bad, and I'll go ahead and take this color here. I think it's bad to push the conversation in this direction here. So when I'm talking about conversational potential and I'm giving people marks against this and giving people marks in favor of this, it's because I'm saying this is always going to lead to better things. It works towards desirable answers, right? And this one is going to lead towards answers that we don't want, and it's going to be negative. So that's that. I think that's a good place to pause and then talk to you guys and get some input on this. Where do you think the line between trying to drag a bad faith answer towards good faith and just being gullible is? Let me break this down, okay? Because you said gullible. This is a very specific word. So let's talk about gullible here for a second, down here in this corner, okay? You said gullible. And you said it might be gullible. And I'm going to grab this thing from up here and move it down here. Where is my thing? Okay. At what point does it become gullible? And I'm going to put this in front of me. Where do you think the line between trying to drag a bad faith answer towards good faith and being gullible is? Gullible, and let me go ahead and find the definition. I'm going to be a definition Andy, so I know what I'm working with here. So I have some variables that I can tweak with. Okay. So gullible is going to be easily persuaded to believe something credulous. Okay? An attempt to persuade a gullible public to spend their money. Okay, so credulous. Let's also get credulous in here. Credulous is going to be having or showing too great a readiness to believe things, right? So it's about believing things, right? Too quick to believe things. So gullible is easily persuaded to believe something. Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't see the fucking semicolon here. Credulous, okay. So easily persuaded to believe something. So let's talk about that for a second, because I think that this is an opinion that plenty of people have, that you're just being gullible when you're working in this capacity. I completely disagree, obviously, but I'll explain why. Instead of raging at you or dismissing you, because I'm going to take what I think is a less than good answer. I think it's like right around here, and I'm going to push you this way, okay? And I'm going to work with it, because that's my belief. So gullible is believing. It is believing. Do we need to believe in an answer to push that answer into a territory where we can work with it, or to choose to work with it? No, right? Like, the whole point of the debate is that I don't believe in this here. And I do believe in this here. Okay? So you saying something that I think is on this half of the spectrum, right, is in the like bad half of the spectrum, I'm certainly not going to believe the things that you're saying. That doesn't really factor in here, right? You're not being gullible. Like, unless you mean gullible to mean that you believe that that's that person's legit answer, in which case you still wouldn't. If you clock that answer as being in the bad faith half of this graph here, then you don't think that it's a legit answer, because non-legit answers go in that half, and legit answers, whoops, fuck, man, this tablet. I'm still getting used to it, so bear with me. Legit answers go in this half, right? So I'm not asking, or I don't think that you should take an answer that is in this quadrant and pretend. I think that you should push that answer to an acceptable or workable place, one that is believable in good faith, right? So that answer, irrespective of whatever, because if I control V again and I bring that thing down, and I'm not going to make it smaller. Oh, I could make it smaller. Fuck it, dude. I'll make it smaller. Resize, shift, drag this bad boy like this. Right here. Okay. Okay. All right. So, and I'm going to minimize this for a second because I think that we understand what the definition is, right? So if we look into here, when you get an answer that is over here, I want you to push it to a place where it's acceptable. Let me zoom out and remember where I'm going with this. Okay, yeah, so we want to push it to a place where we can believe it, where we can work it into our systems so that we can work to agreement, so that I can think better of the person in front of me. If you give an answer, we're going to call it, oops, I'm going to make that way smaller. If you give an answer over here, I'm going to call that answer A. What I'm telling you to do is work from A to B, a B answer. Let's say that they then respond this way when you push it this way, and then you work it over to a C answer, which is finally breaking the threshold of being good, and then we keep pushing it, and we eventually get to a place where I'm like, oh, okay, you're totally engaging in good faith. I totally understand where you're coming from. You're speaking my language. I really, really like it. This D answer is really, really good. Now I understand where you're coming from, right? And what's generally going to happen is somebody who you consider to be bad faith, right, over here, bad faith. You're slowly, maybe now they're an angry person, but you don't think they have devil horns. And now maybe you think that they're just lost and they believe something that's slightly different than you because they're unaware of something. And then you believe that they're like a saint, right? And oh, okay, now you're totally being fair with me. You just didn't understand over here, and I didn't understand you over here. Then I got to understand you a little bit, pushed you where I needed to push you, and now I totally get where you're coming from. And even if we disagree, I don't think that you're a crazy person like I did over here. I think that you're much better, right? So we're pushing the answers. But when we look at answer A, we didn't believe in answer A necessarily. We didn't think that answer A was a good answer, right? We believed it was here because we clocked it here, right? We made a measurement and we said, all right, that answer belongs right here. That is on the precipice of bad faith, right? And then over time, we got new answers. B is a new answer. C is a new answer. D is a new answer. All I'm telling you is to exert, right? Exert force in the conversation to bring it into the good faith territory. That's what I'm saying, to get answers that are better faith, right? And so as you push these things over time, you're going to get answers that are more acceptable to you. And that's what I think that you should work towards. I don't think that you should go in the other direction and make the person out to be a monster, right? I think that you should work them into a territory where you can understand, right? And at B, we're still not really believing that it's a good answer, right? Over here, we are. They've broken the threshold. Now we are starting to believe. Okay? Now we're starting to believe. And then here we believe. Or we accept, right? You don't necessarily, and this is the other thing, is this believe thing has no tie to anywhere on this graph, right? Because they can give me a good faith answer that if we go back to over here, I still don't believe in what their answer is, right? It could still be from the other side of the thing where they have a completely different opinion. I don't necessarily believe in their opinion, but I can respect it. I can understand it because it's in a communication style that is similar to mine, right? And therefore I can like reconcile it with my own view of the world and understand why somebody would believe in that thing, right? So the believing and the accepting, this is separate from like, I don't know, adopting this position as your own, because even positions that are in this section of the graph can still be things that you don't believe, right? So none of this, in my opinion, is about being gullible at all, because gullible is about believing in the answer. And even if an answer is in the legit territory, you're not necessarily believing in this. It's just something that you think was posed in good faith and that you can agree with, right? Or that you can work with. I'm sorry, I should be very specific with the language here. Look, let's take the education versus school issue. You had to believe the person misunderstood something honestly to give their arguments any sort of credence of not being bad faith. It's because, remember, I'm looking to exert a force in this direction. Dima Mama gave an answer over here, and I had to explain why. Why is that answer happening? So then I asked myself, why/how can we move it in this direction? And so I consider different things. Maybe we need to make education more clear here, right? Maybe we need to make mandate more clear here and what the consequences of mandates are. Maybe we need to make this why she is against mandates, which like we don't really go into. Why are you so against mandates, right? Like we don't exert any force to go this direction. Like maybe we did at the very, very beginning with asking good questions, but we didn't for the majority of the conversation. And that's what I'm saying is like, and I'll leave this here. We need to exert force in this direction. And anytime you're exerting force in the opposite direction, I'm counting it against you, right? Good faith is about whether they're not the interlocutor who makes the statement believes that they themselves are saying, yeah, but you don't know that, right? So it's almost like a Turing test, right? So if the person in front of you says something, boop, 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 they say something, bloop, bloop, bloop. You then, as the observer on this side, with your fucking 5 head, Okay? You have to make a decision as to whether or not this was good faith. You don't know what they actually believe. That's unknown to you. So you're looking at what they're saying and you're comparing it versus some model of what you think is in their head. You will never have a perfect like opinion of this, right? Now, people can do things like say something and like smile about it and like act very strangely, right? And that can start to indicate that maybe there's not a correlation between these two things. Sometimes it's really obvious. They say some really dumb shit, sure. But ultimately, you're making an assumption here. And remember that we can change what these answers are over time, right? So regardless of my first assumption, so let's say that I think that they're bad faith by 80%. Like, oh, fuck, this person's being really bad faith. So I'm going to ask him a question that's going to exert a force in another direction. So I'm going to ask him this question here. And then they're going to give me an answer that is like going to be slightly better. Okay? Or helps me understand it a little bit better. Like they give me this answer. I'm like, oh, okay. Now I think that maybe we're at like 60%. Okay, so maybe they're not a complete dumb fuck. They're definitely not fucking with me completely. So then I'm going to ask another question, okay? And then their answer is going to get slowly and slowly better. Like they answer this way, like, oh, okay. This motherfucker doesn't know about this study. Or, oh, okay, this motherfucker legit believes in blah, blah, blah. Okay, so they're not being bad faith. Maybe you end up actually believing in this here. Maybe when you get to this point here, you start to realize, oh, fuck, this person actually believes in this. They actually believe in this statement here. And then if you're at that point, you got to go all the way back to here. And if somebody asks you, like, were they bad faith when they said the first thing? Maybe you're like, no, bro, they actually believe that. It seems like they actually legitimately believe that. So then you have to overwrite what these answers were, and they all become 30% because now you're convinced that it's very likely this person believes that. And let's say you ask a bunch of questions, and at the end you realize, okay, this person actually legitimately believes in this crazy shit. So maybe there is a 0% chance that they were bad faith, which means that this entire time, and maybe it's different with different statements. Maybe this first one was really like hyperbolic and whatever. And you're like, okay, that's 10% because they really didn't believe that. And this is 5% because they actually weren't that bad. But ultimately, all of these are falling into the realm of good faith, right? 0%, right? So this good faith thing, bad faith thing, is like something that can change over time. It's something that can be edited over time. It's something that over the course of the conversation, you may realize, yeah, when they said statement number 1, they actually believed in that shit. Or you may realize that they were being hyperbolic, and in which case these numbers can change, right? But this bad faith thing is independent of what they actually believe.
Love your work, Bookie. Hopefully I can catch you live next time.
Thanks.
Night.
So over time, you get a better idea of what this is here, and then you have a better ability to evaluate what this is here. But working to better understand the person and what their perspective is will enable you to be better at evaluating the bad faith level if that's really something you care about, okay? So even if you want to be more accurate evaluating the bad faith, you're going to need to walk down the logic tree with them and understand their position better to understand that better, right? A little behind in the VOD. Should more people steel man the opponent to help push into the good faith section? Now, maybe, maybe not. That's really fucking dependent on what's going on, right? So should you steel man all the time? When you're applying this force, it can be done in a lot of different ways, okay? It can be done in a way that's like good questions. It can be done in a way that is steel man, right? It could be done in a way that is like asking for details. There's a lot of different things, that you can do to push into this territory here. That's one of them. Does that mean that that's always what you should do? No, right? If you're up against a Nazi, do you want to steel man points about the eradication of particular peoples? Probably not. Okay, probably not. Right? I'm not going to say that any one of these strategies is a solution all of the time. Because if I say, oh yeah, that's what you should use all of the time, all, never, always, These are statements that will always get you in trouble. Always. They always have the potential. So if I tell you, yeah, you should always steelman people, then it's very easy to go, well, Booksmarts, actually, if we have a certain kind of argument and I have to steelman that argument, that leads into a bad outcome, right? So there are going to be times where that doesn't make sense to do. And, you know, that's why I can't say 100% of the time always to do that. I think like 95% of the time, you should try any of these. Just try any of them. Because I think that like 95% of the time, you should be doing this. And then there's some percentage of, whoops. Sorry. Yeah, so I don't know. 95% of the time, you should try something over here. But, you know, that's just my opinion. As someone who wants to practice this stuff too, can you give an example how this might look at a real debate? Yeah, like, I don't want to go into a ton of specifics because then we're going to derail, and I think I give a really good explanation. Apply this to any conversation. Like, we couch this entire thing in the Hanz versus Dima Mama talk. Go watch my review of the Hanz versus Dima Mama talk after hearing this and see if you can understand why I'm calling for things like clarifying education or focusing on what the consequences of a mandate are, right? Because those are questions that are going to do this here, right? So no, I'm not going to give you a bunch because we're going to waste a bunch of time and I want to move on. Book, I think the theory seems innocuous enough, but I doubt this ever works on Twitch. That's so silly to say though, because you don't give me any reason, bro. Like, you go, all right, yeah, I understand all this. This is really great. Yeah, so when you're saying like theory A, I can agree with that, but yeah, on Twitch, not so much. Like, okay, I really don't like this. I think this is a really shitty thing to say. So what I'm gonna ask you about is the part that I don't get. Why? Right? And we get back to this, right? Maybe I'll put in here another question or another thing that you could do. Oh yeah, I can just zoom in like this. Bloop. Why? Why? Okay. How? Questions like, why? Why do you believe this? You know, because I certainly don't believe this. So why do you believe this? Right? We have a disconnect. You're saying, yeah, this works out really well. I think that's a good idea, but it won't work on Twitch. And you don't really give me any explanation. So it's not very helpful to me.
So when do we push the opposite if they aren't budging? If they aren't engaging you and just talking to their audience and grandstanding, virtue signaling? Do we go for the optic win versus developing the convo?
That's completely up to you, and I will not give advice on it. That's up to you. But remember, you're getting into this territory here. What do I do when people do this? You can look at my conversations. I personally back the fuck out. I go, okay, I'm all done talking to you, right? So in my opinion, I just move, okay? I just move. Now that's different for everybody else, and I know that advice doesn't apply for everybody else. You asked me for my personal opinion. If I keep trying and trying and trying, and I can't change the frequency you're operating at, and we have some communication styles that are not lining up, and by communication styles, in this case that you're talking about, your communication style is talking to an audience that I'm not talking to and not me, I just leave. But I'm not going to say that that's the answer for all Twitch people. If you get into a situation like that, this is like special in general relativity, right? Like my general relativity, I think works for all of the conversations that you are going to have as a viewer. And I want to focus on that more. So you as a viewer are not going to run into a situation realistically. Maybe there's a 0.05% where like you're in front of a giant crowd of people and they're playing to that crowd of people as if it were an audience, but I don't care to work with that. That falls under special relativity, right? So all of that we could pack into special relativity. I don't care to talk about special relativity. I care to talk about general relativity. So general relativity, or generally speaking, I think that this, okay? And I know that that's not the way that those two things work necessarily, but that's going to be my comparison, okay? These different theories are going to work in different frames of what's going on. So I'm not going to give advice on that. My personal opinion, which I don't push on to anybody else, I would just leave. Sometimes I feel like developing the convo feels like a better optic win than the dunks. That's my opinion too. Okay, so there you go. There's all that. By the way, you should make a video with all these takes and put it on YouTube so you don't have to keep explaining your positions. I will.
Do you like garlic? How about you garlic ma balls?
Who did that?